Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm painting a simple tree in autumnal colors using watercolors. As always, I'm making a card, but you do not have to make a card. You can create whatever you want. Also, this is definitely for beginners as well as budget friendly. If you want to know what products I used, just hop over to my blog. The link is in the description below. However, you don't need the exact products I'm using. Just use whatever you have at home or is in your budget. To paint the tree, the supplies are simple: watercolors, watercolor cardstock, and brushes. To make the card, I will also use a card base and a sentiment stamp set with a black ink and an adhesive. I started with a lighter shade of green and yellow, and then I started adding darker shades here and there to create a depth. I painted the tree a little bit thinner at first because you can always expand, but you cannot retract. I was painting in a dabbing motion, creating something like clusters of leaves. Also, I left some spots white without any color, where I will be at the end painting in a few branches here and there using brown paint. However, I managed to cover most of the white space, but that's okay. To be honest, the trees I was basing this on, they were really full. You did not really see any branches. I really wanted to paint a tree for a while. There were a few trees in our neighborhood that were still bushy and green. This was around mid-September, but at the top there was a patch of yellow leaves forming, and this is what inspired the tree that I'm painting today. Or actually, it is loosely based on the trees because this is more like imaginary tree. By the way, I have never painted a tree before. That's why I'm saying this is for beginners, because I am a beginner myself and I also had to check out a few tutorials. I will put some of them into a playlist. The link you will find in the description. I really like the tree shade that Campbell painted. I didn't follow everything. First of all, I started with the top, not with the bottom. And to be honest, my brush just didn't want to do what she was doing. But I still found it helpful to watch all these videos. It was kind of a starting point. What worked for me and I found very helpful that I did not see in any of these videos, or at least I don't remember, I was working in layers and I let each layer dry, or actually I dried it with my heat tool before I applied another darker layer of color, which helped to create more depth. As you can see, I used light green, light yellow, dark yellow, and I also had this orange brown, which I added in a few places. You can also use reds, oranges, browns. It's all up to you. Before we move on to the painting of the trunk, if you enjoyed this video so far, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So, moving on to the next part. Because I didn't want the colors to be mixing, I let the piece dry before I painted the trunk. I started with the outline of the trunk and then I filled it in with a wash of brown paint. And while it was still wet, I added more saturated color to create more depth. Also, while it was still wet, I painted the ground. And because the trunk was still wet, it seeped into the green paint, which is something I wanted. It creates this effect where the trunk looks like it is connected to the ground. Next, I quickly painted the branches between the spaces that were still white, which weren't that many. And then I went back to the trunk. While I like the effect that the green and brown created when they mixed, I also wanted few of the roots to be visible. So after the green paint was dry, I painted in a few of the roots. So the tree is finished. To make it into a card, I started first with a sentiment. I searched my stash, which by the way is not that big, and I found a sentiment that fits quite well. It says "Just for you," and I stamped it on the left side next to the trunk using a black ink. You can skip this step. I think it looks good without the sentiment as well. I just have the stamps, so I use them. Lastly, I adhere the panel onto a card base using a double-sided tape. The card bases I make myself, but you can also buy these pre-made. And the card is done. If you like painting your own images, I have a playlist with plenty of these cards, so make sure you check it out. The playlist should be showing on your screens now. You can just click on it. If not, you will find the link to it in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.